Welcome back. We're nearing the end of the Arkham Knight side mission rankings. There's two more after this, Azrael and Riddler. And I know I've never mentioned it, but there's an entire playlist full of these videos with shorts ranking a few of the smaller side missions. I'll leave a link in the description for that because I know I've never mentioned it. Also, thank you guys so much for 500 subscribers. This has been a goal I was hoping to reach before January, but we've done it before December, so thank you so much for that. It's genuinely amazing that so many people are actually liking these videos and liking it enough to subscribe, and showing up each and every time. It's genuinely amazing, so thank you for that, and here's to the next 500. But today, here we are ranking Shadow War, so let's go. Subscribe, like, and comment your favourite portrayal of Ra's al Ghul as we rank Shadow War, the final outing of Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows thus far in the Arkhamverse. So as per usual, we're ranking story, gameplay, and difficulty from 1 to 10, and then combining them to give a score out of 30. So let's get into it. Also, remember, please subscribe, thank you. The story of Shadow War begins when Alfred tells Batman that an officer has spotted some quote-unquote crazy-ass ninjas jumping and fighting across the rooftops of Gotham City. So Batman heads to investigate said crazy-ass ninjas. When he arrives at the scene of the fight reported, Batman sees two dead League of Shadows members and does some classic detective work to deduce there are actually 3 ninjas here, and one escapes, and so tracks a left-behind blood trail of a third ninja all the way to the Elliott Memorial Hospital. Upon breaking into the hospital, we find League loyalists being trained, and we butt in and stop their training before trying to turn on the power. But the power's off, so we use the remote Batmobile control and turn on the backup generator, granting the Dark Knight access to the lower floors of Elliott Memorial. Upon getting to the bottom floor of the hospital, an eerie scene unfolds. The corridor is plastered with bodies, strung up, dead in a pile. All dead. Apart from one. But Batman heads through to the morgue and finds another dead ninja, some more detective work, and works out she was trying to press buttons in a specific order to access a door. He follows the pattern and opens the door, leading to a huge chamber with a throne-like centerpiece in the background of the room. In the throne, connected to tubes and wiring, sits Ra's al Ghul, dying and being kept alive by the Lazarus he's abused for so many centuries. League members tell Batman he must heal Ra's to shift the sides of the ongoing stalemate between the League loyalists and the break-off rebellion group who think Ra's time in charge is over. Ra's pleads with Batman, even using his fallen daughter, Talia, as a bargaining chip to make Batman comply and bring him back to power. Batman heads out to find a pure strain of Lazarus, enough to bring Ra's back, and so sets the Batmobile scanner to locate the source down. Batman heads into the chamber when he finds the source and begins extracting some Lazarus, before being interrupted by rebel assassins, led by Nyssa Ratko, Ra's other daughter and sister of Talia al Ghul, who puts Batman in a difficult position. Kill Ra's and end his reign of terror, or keep him alive, following his own moral code, but leaving the consequences of Ra's being alive, given the amount of time he'll have to heal back to full power, causing unknown amounts of pain and agony. Batman heads back to the hospital and turns to Alfred for help. Does he refuse to give Ra's the cure, thus killing him, or restore him to full power, maintaining his oath to never take a life, but bringing one of his greatest foes back to full strength? Alfred actually does point out that technically Ra's is already dead, and thus not giving him the Lazarus wouldn't be killing him, so to speak, just not saving him, which is an entirely different conversation we'll have in a bit. But Batman heads down to the chamber to make his choice. Depending on the choice you make here, Batman will either administer the Lazarus and end up fighting the rebel assassins, which ends with Nyssa being killed by Ra's, but in the aftermath of this, averting an all-out war as both factions seem to leave Gotham. On the flip side, if Batman decides to withhold the cure and let Ra's die, the Loyalists fight Batman, and after he takes them out, Nyssa prepares to kill what she describes as what's left of her father, but Batman talks her down and takes Ra's into custody at the GCPD. Ra's tells Batman he's proud of him, and the curtain closes on Ra's al Ghul, his final few days spent in GCPD lockup. Wow, so where do I even start with this? Well, I think it's obvious enough given the ending and the choice you're presented with. The story itself is great, and the ending is intriguing. It presents the question of whether letting someone willingly die is killing them. Is standing by as someone takes their last breaths while you stand there with the power to save them, killing them? Well, by all accounts, this game presents the choice to save Ra's as the right one. It preserves Batman's no-kill rule, but at the same time, by that logic, he broke this rule underneath the Monarch Theatre back in Arkham City when the Joker drew his last breaths. Batman says he would have saved him, but here you can actually kind of prove whether Batman actually would have saved him, depending on your final choice in this mission, which is a nice little callback. If left to die, Bruce will actually carry Ra's body out of the hospital like he carries Joker out. I could honestly make an entire video on this mission and this choice by itself, because it brings up some great conversations about Batman's code, what the morally correct choice is, and more stuff like that. It's great and lends a huge amount of conversation and interest to all the characters involved. Tell me in the comments what you did or what you think the right choice is. Personally, I'm of the view that Batman does not kill. Whether or not he kills Ra's by not saving him is a whole other topic. But anyway, this mission also wraps up Ra's and the League's inclusion in the Arkhamverse, and serves as a great way to make sure they get a fun and respectful ending, which changes drastically depending on your choice, but still keeps in line with the lore and feel of these games. It's really good, and it introduces Nyssa, although for a short time, which is cool. Brings back Ra's, who was great in City, and brings emotional stakes around Bruce's mourning over Talia's death. Overall, for me, the story of this mission is great. It's really heavy, has deep emotional stakes, hard-hitting consequences, and brings up the ever-raging debate about Batman as a character himself and his moral code. So overall, Shadow War gets a 9 out of 10. It might be short and sweet lengthwise, but it serves as a great way to phase the League out of the Arkham universe one way or another, and is a mission people still discuss today regarding that final decision. So let's see how the gameplay stacks up and move on to that. But just before we do, I wanted to talk about the set designs here. This won't count for anything, as I don't think it ever has before, so I'm just going to talk about the designs and atmosphere of certain areas here. It's so quintessentially Arkham. This corridor here, under the hospital, well, I'll just let you watch and listen to this gameplay because it feels so Asylum-like. I think it's the lighting and the overall design of this corridor, but it just made me think of intensive treatment in Arkham Asylum. Also, in the chamber where the Lazarus is, there's a huge amount of that Arkham atmosphere. And it goes to show that, although that the series may have evolved and the atmosphere from Asylum may have died down, in the later installments especially, its impact can still be felt. And I did make a full video on Asylum. So I can't do that. Go watch the video, it's good. This and the Killer Croc mission both have insanely good atmosphere in certain areas, and again just goes to show that Arkham is built on its atmosphere and its designs, and in certain areas of this game, this shines through really well despite Night having a much more futuristic feel than the other games. Anyway, the gameplay in Shadow War actually begins in a way which is very reminiscent to finding the League for the first time in Arkham City. You find the ninjas and then have to track one of the League's hideouts by following their blood trail across the city. This was a nice little callback and takes you around the island, meaning you have to use a lot of on-foot movement, which is really fun. We're also fighting a few thugs on the way to the hospital, which again it's always alright. After getting to the hospital, there's a little combat section which has ninjas involved, which is always a tricky mix-up personally. Their attack pattern is different and their whole movement is a lot different, and added to the fact these can actually dodge some of your attacks, and these guys are an issue. A little Batmobile puzzle later and a Batarang puzzle down below, and we find ourselves doing more detective work in the morgue, where, completely unrelated, there's a ton of Easter eggs. The bodies of the lady who serve you at the diner at the start of the game, the body of the man who alerts you to the smoker in the corner in Paulie's diner at the start of the game, and most notably, an empty freezer labelled Talia al Ghul. An interesting lot of Easter eggs which make absolutely no difference to gameplay, but they're still there, and I didn't know where else to put them in the video. We do some cool detective work here, which is quite tricky on a first playthrough, but it's still pretty cool. It's really Batman, it's great. Then the drive to find the Lazarus is pretty average Arkham Knight stuff. It's alright, but something we've done before in the story, and I'm sure a lot of people would just wish wasn't there, but it makes sense to do. Then the combat in the final two segments, in the chamber and in Ra's throne room, or whatever it's called, are really cool. The ninjas do these cool attacks which are very reminiscent of the fights against the martial artists in Origins, with these long multi-attack sequences which are really cool and a good mix-up. The sequences are so different from any other combat point in the game, and it just makes this mission feel really unique combat-wise. Overall, the gameplay here is pretty fun. It combines detective work, varied combat, and unique gameplay, and even a little bit of Batmobile gameplay, which all combines to make a really fun and enjoyable experience. Each part of the mission has its own unique gameplay element, and it just creates a really concise and unique experience as a package. I love the detective gameplay here. It begins very similar to City, which is a nice callback, and then there's the other part in the morgue, which is actually really fun. There's plenty of ways to mess up and play around with different combinations, and so when we look at the gameplay as a complete package, considering it only really lacks a stealth segment, which wasn't really expected anyway, I have to give Shadow War an 8 out of 10. It's fun, unique, and introduces features which I wish were in the main game, and in my opinion they just weren't used enough. And overall, the experience keeps the player on their toes, which again makes for a really fun experience. Anyway, let's see how difficult this is. Finally, the difficulty. Usual stuff, we're ranking this based on a player who's played the Arkham games once on hard, and is okay at the games, so for this video, we're using someone who has a very specific set of skills. Impressive to the untrained eye, Liam Neeson. I'm sure Liam Neeson loves the Arkham games. They've taken him a while to complete, although he's not on the A team of Arkham players, he's definitely still up there. The initial detective part following the blood trail can actually be pretty tricky if you don't know where to go from the jump. The trail leads you across all sorts of elevations and all sorts of rooftops across the island, and takes a fair bit of time to find where you have to be. The combat segments aren't too hard, but the ninjas are always an issue. One I tend to hate personally, but Obi-Wan over here is doing pretty good with this, dealing non-stop damage to build up his combos. The other detective section isn't too hard for a man of his skills. It's just common sense, and the game kind of walks you through this section pretty well, so it's a pretty easy task. The hardest part of this mission isn't actually gameplay related though, it's the choice at the end. For a man of many roles and many acts, Raish has decided whether Raish's life is worth saving or letting burn out. That's probably the most challenging part here, but overall the actual gameplay here isn't overly difficult. There are definitely a few smaller challenges, namely the remote Batarang challenge early on, and the opening detective work, which can cause some issue for the uninitiated, but nothing too serious. And for that reason, and everything I've said above, Shadow War gets a fairly decent 7 out of 10. A more challenging mission when compared to a lot of the other side missions in this game, but nothing overly outrageous to the point where you just can't complete it. Overall, Shadow War gets a 24 out of 30. A score that is fitting for the Demon's Head's final outing in this universe for now. Respectable, if nothing else. Shadow War for me is a great mission line. Its story combined with the varied gameplay and great ending all make for an unforgettable side mission, which tops off the Season of Infamy DLC very nicely. We've got 2 missions left, Heir to the Cowl and Riddler's Revenge, both of which are coming, with Riddler's Revenge kind of acting like a season finale, so maybe don't expect that for a couple of months, but Azrael's mission will be out soon. Again, thank you so much for 500 subscribers. Obviously the next goal is 1,000, which is a huge ask. It's a long way away, but from where we are now, I would think we could probably get there eventually. Go and watch the playlist of all the other Arkham Knight side missions, because they're all in there, apart from the ones I've mentioned, obviously being Azrael and Riddler. Some of them are shorts, which I know a few of you guys haven't seen, so go and watch those. They're in the same style, they're just, well, shorter. Like, comment, and obviously subscribe, because that helps out a lot. And I'll see you later. Goodbye.